Whether it's the activism of the high school students in Florida or just the increasing number and frequency of mass shootings, the gun debate has turned. Take Governor Kasich, for example. The man who has signed bills to allow hidden guns in bars and in daycare centers said this about the Florida high school massacre.
I was talking to a friend of mine this morning. He's a big gun collector. I said, if all of a sudden you couldn't buy an AR-15, what would you lose? Would you feel as though your Second Amendment rights would be eroded because you couldn't buy a god-darn AR-15? These are the things that have to be looked at, and action has to happen before. And look, you're never going to fix all of this, but common sense gun laws make sense.
Shortly after that interview, as Ohio Public Radio's Karen Kassler noticed, Kasich changed his campaign website, taking down his uncompromising gun rights stances. Lieutenant Governor Mary Taylor, who wants to succeed him, called him out on it. She released a statement saying all too often in the aftermath of these tragic events, there is knee-jerk reactions to attack the Second Amendment rights of our citizens rather than to address the root causes, which often center around mental illness. Restricting the rights of law-abiding Ohioans to legally purchase a gun does not do that. Neither does removing your prior support for pro-Second Amendment legislation from a website. Another shot across John Kasich's bow there. And for Kasich, this is a bold, I would say risky move for a man who perhaps, likely, wants the Republican nomination for president someday.
Well, I think that bold and risky moves are in order. It certainly catapulted, Donald Trump into the presidency. So, John Kasich, but it goes way, way past where he's been for a long, long time. And it's interesting what, kind of what he's replaced it with on the website. There's still reference to gun, but it's this common sense thing and that sort of a thing. It's bold, but he wants to make another bold move in 2020, it looks like.
Yeah, so the more cynical part of me says, maybe this is politics to distinguish himself from Donald Trump, consistent with that brand that he wants to be the alternative to Trump. That said, I think people who are taking a look at what's happening and are changing their minds, coming to the conclusion that common sense gun reform is the right thing, I think they should be welcomed into the coalition. Now, Governor Kasich is governor for another year, and as governor, he could do some things here in the state, like champion some of the bills that are currently pending that fall under that common sense gun reform.
Well, and he's established a secret panel of people to study gun reform.
Yeah, so we'll see. He's got some time here.
Michael Miller, how does that affect John Kasich's standings for the Republican base, the hardcore Republican?
Well, obviously, I think he probably loses some, but I don't think a lot. When you have such a tragedy like this, Mike, with children involved and so forth, I think political people have to do something. And some of them will actually go to one extent or the other and actually say things that are meaningful. Other ones will kind of take the middle of, well, we need to do this stuff that really doesn't matter to anything. And I think the governor's probably serious in what he's saying. Is there some politics involved, perhaps? But I do think he's serious. Same thing, look back 4 years ago when Governor Strickland. And he changed completely on his feelings. And maybe it was politics, but I give him the benefit of the doubt that it was something he just come to change his mind about.
Yeah, he said Governor Strickland said it was Sandy Hook that changed his mind.
Yes, and one thing that Governor Kasich said in that thing you just ran is, there is no final answer to this. If we ban all these guns, the ones he's talking about and so forth, you're still going to have some of this stuff. But common sense tells us, I think we need to do something. But whether we get to that point or not, who knows?
Mike DeWine, a little less bold than John Kasich as far as his switching on gun rights. Jim Siegel, he says, let's tighten up background checks but not expand them. Also some school safety issues, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know how much Mike DeWine is really going to come over to the side where Kasich is right now. Nor do I know if nor do I think necessarily that legislative Republicans are going to do so. Next week, Governor Kasich has announced that he plans to roll out a list of proposals related to gun safety and hand them over to the legislature and say, we need to do this. I think he says he's been convening with a group of people who are gun experts on both sides of the issue. And he says they have formed up these proposals. We don't know he won't say what they're going to be, but they probably relate to things like he talked about there, assault style weapons, the size of magazines, things
background checks,
bump stock bans, background checks, things of that nature. But what will the Republicans in the legislature do? They've had zero interest in doing anything that goes against the NRA for as 20 years.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they're going to start now.
And in fact, I think it's fair to say their agenda was very pro-NRA, with the last couple of years seeing the guns in bars, being able to carry on college campuses, daycares, things like that.